from other faculty members in class. And I could take up a lot of our time this evening describing the important work that she's done and the role that she's played in India, but I think our time would be much better spent listening to her and having a chance to speak with her. So I'll be brief. So she began her career as a senior bureaucrat in the Indian Administrative Services, and then I believe resigned after 7 short or maybe long years, somewhat disillusioned with the way the bureaucracy functions in India, and this was in the mid-1970s. Following this, she, along with colleagues Nikhil Dey and Shankar Singh, founded the organization that you just heard mentioned, the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, which stands for Peasants and Workers Strength Union, or Peasants and Workers Union, the MKSS. With the MKSS, she campaigned for workers' rights, fair wages, and land redistribution, which turned into a broad-based social movement that became the backbone of a movement to demand greater transparency from government, that it in turn translated into the Right to Information Act, which was finally passed by the Indian Parliament in 2005. The RTI, as this act is called, has, I think, proven to be one of the most formidable tools for social activists in India, demanding government accountability and transparency and greater social justice. You can read about the significance of this accomplishment and the journey that led to it in a book called The RTI Story, Power to the People, which she is the author of, although sometimes in interviews she will describe herself as the chronicler or the collector of stories rather than the author of these stories. Her activism over 40 years has been recognized by several national and international awards, including the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Award and the Ramon Magsaysay Award given by the Philippines government. She's been on numerous lists of the most influential people, the most inspiring people, and those who've made the most significant contributions to society. So it's a tremendous honor to host her here, and please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you.
And you promised to fill in the gaps, so you should please do so.
Kamaini is late, so you'll also have to tell me what we should do.
Yeah.
The MKSS, because it's too difficult for you to pronounce Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, the MKSS is much easier, is a non-party political organization. And in India, post-independence, we inherited a system of political mobilization and movement which, while calling itself political, didn't fight for office. Now, this is a peculiarity of the South Asian subcontinent, maybe, definitely of India, that we felt when Gandhi did not take office and remained outside office, and fought actually and struggled against the new nascent Indian government for all kinds of rights, including the fact that Muslims and Hindus were getting butchered because of partition, and went and sat in the heart of the trouble. So the day India was declared independent, Gandhi was not in New Delhi. He was sitting in what is a village in Bangladesh now, called now Khadi. And when he was asked whether he had any comment to say, he said, I have no comment about independence. In a sense, that kind of reaction to what should have been a day of rejoicing, the comment that he made by making no comment was that he was disheartened by the way the two countries got formed, by the violence, by the death, by the insanity that possessed humanity, the killings, and very soon after he was assassinated. That space that Gandhi created for this kind of political action, plus many others did contribute to it. But he actually, by talking about civil disobedience, by talking about non-violent protest, by talking of resistance, and resistance not only to a foreign government, but your own government when it does something wrong, created the space for this kind of political action. People who are in this kind of political action today in India are not necessarily Gandhians. They may be Marxists, they may be Ambedkarites, that is people who follow Ambedkar. They may be people who do not know Gandhi. But the point is this tradition was reinforced by his adoption of that process, and we had subsequently many others like Jayaprakash Narayan and so many others. I won't go into the history of what it did. But what it did for us was it created space for people to organize themselves to fight not for office, but fight politically for acts of, well, you can call it acts of conscience or the constitution, which gave us rights, trying to get closer to equality, trying to get closer to elimination of discrimination, fight various evils, social evils like caste society, which has hierarchy, which has discrimination of the worst sort, religious strife, so many things which the constitution does not guarantee in India. So to fight against all these social evils and get a bigger share economically and socially for the people of the country, I think there has been a series of movements and struggles, and we locate ourselves in that struggle, and we are not a non-governmental organization. That means that we don't write up projects and we don't ask for funds for that project. The NKSS decided in the very beginning of its political life to occupy the space consciously. It was not created by me. We had two major struggles, one for land and one for wages. I know that in this particular city you have a very important struggle for minimum wages. I don't know how many of you know about it, but there is, and there has been a struggle which has ended in some kind of success, that now you can get $15 an hour, and I don't know what you got before. So minimum wages is a very important battle for very poor people, because it's their only guarantee that they will get a decent wage from people who have been part of an exploitative system, either in traditional sense or in a modern sense, for centuries. So we fought that battle, and we won that battle with great difficulty, but we did win it. And we came up against serious issues with land allotment. So all these issues snowballed into a feeling that people got that if they organize themselves into a political movement, perhaps we get better, more justice and more equality. So more than 100 people debated on the nature of this organization, and it was born in 1990. None of us take more than the minimum wage as honoraria. So all of us draw 6,000, 390 as the minimum wage. Rupees. Yes, not dollars. 6,390 rupees, which is $100. $100 plus.
Per month?
More than $100. And I would have liked to have projected something, but there's no space here. And we live very frugally and very simply. But we also follow, this is very Gandhian, to live frugally and simply, but it's also far left in India. If you live like this with the people, live in a very simple way, and you argue for land rights, you argue for poor people's rights, you're often dubbed as a Maoist organization. So we've gone through all these phases, we've called all that, and with that background, I'm still waiting for Kamaini, so I have another 5 minutes to go. So the NKSS was born.
So our plan for this event was to have it a dialogic form with a conversation between you and someone you work with, or you used to work with.
Yes.
So I wonder whether
you'd like to ask a few questions.
Maybe we could start with.
So if you
and would you like to sit on
questions and then I'll talk.
Would you like to sit up there, or?
I don't mind. What would you all like me to do?
Be comfortable.
And not there.
Okay, then should we move the chairs down here?
We can find it. When Kamaini comes, I'll sit with her.
Okay.
But till then, I'll be informal.
Okay.
Okay. Can I take some questions, please? And then, since you all know a fair amount about, that's why I wanted to know your background. Since you do know a little bit about South Asia and possibly about India, so why don't you ask me? Let me take 3 questions. Yeah? Who'll do this? Who'll help me with the questions?
I will. Okay, questions. Avi?
Maybe I have 2 questions to start with. First is, do you think that Nehruvian philosophy has anyway detracted from the Gandhian thought that you just talked about? Number 1. Number 2 is, why did not movements like the cooperative movement, dairy cooperative or agricultural cooperative, assume the space that you've been able to create?
Second question now.
Any students in the room want to lead us on with a question? We ended our class on a very hopeless note, if you remember. This might be a chance to get some inspiration. Jadu?
Yes. I would actually like to hear your thoughts about where the Right to Information Act is today, because I still remember when it first came out and that incredible sense of a victory, and then now thinking about it after this time in terms of what it's enabled and what's still left to do and where it's weakened.
Can I take the privilege as moderator to ask you? So I want to go back in time to why you left the IAS. I mean, we know lots of general descriptions about how the IAS functions, but I would like to know what specifically your experiences were that made you disillusioned.
Any other comment? Yeah, Suren.
I have a question that starts with a quote from current Prime Minister of India, PM Modi. He said, why is it that subsidies going to the well-off corporates are portrayed in a positive manner when a benefit is given to farmers or to the poor? All the experts and government officers normally call it handout or subsidy. However, I find that if a benefit is given to industry, it's usually called as job-creating incentive. And that's very surprising that it came from him. That's the same.
When did he say that?
It was in 2016, and we see a similar thing here where all the spending on Medicare, Medicaid, all the social security benefits are seen as handouts. But if you give a tax break to Amazon, then it's job creation. And so I want to ask you, what is it specifically in terms of India? What's the impact of social security net that we have in India? Right to food, right to education, and I think RTI is also part of that net. How much does it cost taxpayers, and how much does it help us? So Prime Minister Modi gave a figure that in 2016 we spent 60,000 crores, which is roughly $100 billion on corporate handouts. I would like to call them handouts and not job creating job incentives.
Okay. So if you don't mind if I mix and start answering some questions first, the other one later. I think I'll take the Nehru versus Gandhi debate. I don't know how many of you have been in India lately. The biggest victim of public opinion today is Nehru. Everything that's gone wrong with the economy is blamed on Nehru. And there are diatribes against him, there is slogans against him, there's writing against him, there's slander. I mean, there's everything that you can conceivably think that would bring him down as a national figure is being done in India. It's strange to us that one should hit at Nehru when one follows the paradigm that he created. Because today's paradigm of development owes its existence to Nehru. Most Indians who are sitting in this audience here are here today because of Nehru, because he created specialized universities, campuses, he created the institutes of technology, he created modern medicinal colleges, medical colleges. He put in the whole notion of a modern educational system. He talked about rationality in terms of reason and scientific temper, and he did the whole lot. The debate with Gandhi at this time was Gandhi said that we should have a developed, and of course industry. He set up the big steel machine factories, he set up the dams, and he said, one famous quotation of Nehru's is that when he inaugurated the Bhakra Dam, which is a big dam in Punjab, he said, these are the temples of modern India. The present dispensation, which really looks at development quite in that sense, but it's progressed he had the notion of a mixed economy and he promoted public sector undertakings, which meant that the same kind of industry was developed not by a private institution but by the state. But he also allowed private parties to exist, and he created the notion of a mixed economy, which meant that you had planned and unplanned economy. You had a planning commission and you had a 5-year plan, and he put forward before the whole country what the government in power planned to do for the next 5 years, outlays, budgets, and perspectives of what each sector would do for the people. Gandhi actually wanted a different kind of development, but I think because this debate was not understood by the people of India at that stage, and Gandhi had opted out of power in any case, out of the power of being in government, and because he didn't live long enough to carry that debate further, it just ended there. But I don't think that the kind of arguments we have today existed then. And today, if you look at what's happening today, and I don't want to go into detail because Kamaini has come and we must start, but really today the arguments are absurd. You follow the Nehruvian model, you take it many steps further and you make it far greater privatization. Colleges are getting privatized, schools are getting privatized, hospitals are getting privatized, the education system is getting privatized, everything is going into contract systems. Public health will soon go in India, and we wonder how long we'll have a government that's run by our own people. That might also go in contract jobs to anybody outside. So in that kind of situation, to argue against Nehru, you can only get away with it when you have an ignorant people. The problem with India today is that we have a population of 50% of India's population is under 25. And the large majority of neo-literates have gone to institutions where their textbooks have been tampered with. So the result is that you come up with a huge number of voters who don't understand real politics, they don't understand their own country's history, they don't understand ideological positions. So they come and they vote, and then whatever you say, whatever the media feeds into you, and the media is now completely corporatized, so that's what you end up doing. You end up falling and voting for a dream that is probably majorly an illusion. So that is the tragedy of India. So I would say instead of Nehru versus Gandhi, I would say Nehru versus Modi, or I would say Nehru versus himself, because it's ridiculous, the arguments that are there today. The cooperative movement did not succeed because A, there wasn't enough discussion with people, it was not understood by human beings who were at the grassroots, it was a system managed by a government and by manipulators and people who had already misused power in government, so it became another source of corruption, another source of misuse of power and authority. That's why the cooperative movement failed in India. Not because as a concept it was bad, but because in the education of your own people and in the implementation of it, you didn't tell them the pros and cons, the problems that would arise, the issues that would have to be understood, and the notion of a cooperative could be born in a rural area only if you deal with social fissures. The caste, class, gender, and religious fissures, which we didn't do. So when you don't deal with that, what you see as a community is only because of geographic location, but they have so much internal conflict that you can't think of them as a community. They are not a community. So I'll answer the simpler questions, and I'm going to start with the 60,000 crores after Kamaini asks me a few questions. May I postpone that argument, that discussion to later? Why did I leave the IAS? I've lost count as to how many times I've been asked the question. Yeah. And every time I do a creative answer which is not exactly what I said last time. Right. So you must forgive me if I sound different every time. Since I have to be brief, no bureaucracy has ever really brought about change anywhere in the world. Anywhere. The bureaucracy is created to maintain the status quo. So in America, come the Republicans, they sway one side. Come the Democrats, they'll sway. the opposite side. If there is a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, which I'm beginning to believe is far more notional than real, and in some essential ways, yes, they're different, but in terms of the economic paradigms, I don't know whether there's a great deal of difference. In India, people who fought with Indira Gandhi for the emergency, as soon as she lost it, were completely against her. So if you have a civil service which essentially swears or takes an oath or affirms constitutional values and then looks at what it will get out of a government, if it takes a decision whether you get a better posting, a better job or better perks, and everything devolves around to your own salaries and your own benefit, I didn't think change would come from there. And you have to fight internal battles. And I know some very good IAS officers, good civil servants, and they've all had to fight internal battles and they've got tired at the end of it. Many of them in terms of numbers, but in terms of percentage, very few really managed to mold the system to deliver for the constitutional norms, to remove inequality, to address discrimination, and so on. I'm also going to leave the RTI today for later, if you don't mind, that will come at the tail end. So maybe start, Kamaini, in the absence of your...
So really sorry about
this delay, but I thought I'd just carry on this time.
Do you want to move up to the chairs and be comfortable?
It's easier for us to see this way kind of dialects.
You took some questions.
You want some listen? So yeah, really sorry about this. We got caught in a traffic jam and I don't think we had mentally braced ourselves for that. So,
Introduce yourself.
yeah. My name is Kamayani. I work in Bihar with a workers' organization. It's registered as a trade union. And yeah, more as we talk. So Aruna, so I work in an organization very similar to how the MKSS works, the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, the organization that you are a founding member of. As I understand, you lived in a village for a very long period and you are part of the local mobilizing. But for many years now, your organization has been able to spare you and from the local organizing. And we see you a lot in national formations and organizations. We see you in the National Federation of Indian Women, broad left democratic organization of women, and we see you in the National Alliance of People's movements. So would you like to shed a little bit of light on the kind of work that it engages you in when you are in these forums and organizations?
We are supposed to be conversing about how democracy, making democracy work. And democracy works in great plurality. It works at the grassroots level, it works at the middle level, it works at the national level, it works at the state level, or it should work at all these levels. It also works for individuals, it works for collectives, it works for a series of contradictory issues. But if you look at democracy, it promises for every citizen the same value. But when you actually start looking at it economically and socially, it's very different. So you have immense amount of contradictions that have to be resolved in the process of democracy with fairness and justice. And so governance within democracy is a very difficult task. It's a necessary task, but it's a very difficult task. When you are a movement or when you are a campaign, like we all, Kamaini and I are, and Sumi has come. Sumi is also part of a big campaign. So we're all people, whether Sumi comes from the transgender campaign, Kamaini comes from a rural trade union, I come from a rural workers campaign which feels, Kamaini and I define ourselves as political animals, we think that there is no question of not saying we are political, but what kind of politics are we involved in? So when you look at the gamut of India and you look at the 1.2 billion people, no grassroots campaign can ever succeed unless there's scale. Every issue that's raised in my village, in Nadu or in thereabouts, has to resonate with a large number of villages in Rajasthan. It also has to resonate with villages in Bihar, villages in Bengal. It has to resonate with people in South India, and it has to then form itself into a loose formation, at least a cohesive loose formation to demand our rights. And the poor have to have bulk. Otherwise, we have a slogan which we say that our strength is in numbers. We say in Hindi, "Hamari sankhya, hamari takat." That is, our numbers is our strength. So how do you get those numbers together? So if you just look at the microcosm and you don't look at the macrocosm, you're finished. And I think the NKSS's contribution in its, not that it thought about it so much, but the way it evolved, which is there in this book, not through my story, it's not my story, it's the stories of very ordinary people, extraordinary people, who saw this relationship. So they saw what was happening in the village council, which is the panchayat, their denial of rights linked to what was happening in Delhi in the planning commission, at the state assembly, and also in the Indian parliament. So when they linked it all together, the battle became a huge battle, a powerful battle. If you keep it to your village level, it does die down. So I think the recognition of this linkage has, whether it is the right to food, the right to work, the right to information, child rights, whatever it is, it has to be a pan-Indian movement to get these numbers together. And I think it's in that effort, Kamaini, that I feel that some of us who've gone grey fighting and are also slower now in our movements, but agility is only lost in the body. The mind remains agile, can lend themselves to performing other jobs, which are probably much more difficult in one sense and much more frustrating. Because when you're with people, it's always wonderful. Because there is love, there's affection, there are quarrels, there are fights, there's disagreement, but there's warmth and there's a sense of community. The further you go from your own wonderful human beings into the corridors of Delhi, of power, of manipulation, of deceit, of doublespeak, which Suren just mentioned, then you're really fighting a terrible battle. And it's frustrating. But I think it's important to fight those battles. And that's why I think these formations are necessary. And you're also part of many of those formations. So that it's a necessary evil, if you like.
So let me try and connect a couple of things that I hear you saying. So you're saying that, so the people who've taken the struggle forward, that the organizations that you're part of, are very ordinary but extraordinary people. You also say your work is primarily political, like we believe. And you're also saying there's a need to connect the micro to the macro. Now, in some ways, what the MKSS and your work is most well known for is the right to information movement in the country. And so there is a link between the struggle locally that the MKSS led in the villages for minimum wages, and then to the larger struggle for the Right to Information Act in the country. And later many other South Asian countries actually picked up, and it became some sort of a model law which was taken, or at least inspired other laws. So I was wondering that given this connection of micro, macro and the politics involved, and you always say that politics is not just about theories and numbers, it's about storytelling. Can we see a little bit of the storyteller in you in this story?
I can read the story of another being, not my own, because all stories are culled from folklore. And let me tell you that the politics that emerge from stories are much more powerful than any theory. And I think India today is where it is because most of our political work has stopped looking at narratives and stories. And we are really only looking at theory. And for people who don't understand theoretical formulations, it's just so many words. The same thing from a parable, a narrative, a universally understood story makes immediate sense to the masses of people. And I'm going to read a story retold by my friend Shankar Singh of a famous Rajasthani folk story to explain the predicament of information. And it recalls this Rajasthani folk story of why we wanted to fight for information and why did we anticipate its importance in governance. This is a story, if those of you are from India, rewritten by a man called Vijay Dandeta, who is a famous storyteller in Rajasthan, who brought these stories to us and did a great compilation. He's extremely well known. Some of his stories have also been made into films. He says, and Shankar talks about it, that there was a rich trader who was sleeping on the floor on a mat on a hot summer's night. Suddenly he felt sharp, piercing movement on his ample stomach, and he got a quick glimpse of a rat running across it. He woke up and shouted loudly. The entire family woke up and ran in alarm, fearing that some calamity may have befallen the head of the family. They were afraid that he'd been bitten by a snake. Of course, in India we have snakes. If you sleep on the floor, there's a great chance of being bitten by. Dev Dungri, where Kamaini also lived with us for some time. Snakes were not unknown to crawl here and there, and we always took great care that we were not bitten by one. So they were afraid that he had been bitten by a snake. When they pelted anxious questions at him, he said, "It's really nothing. A rat passed over my stomach." The family members were relieved and exasperated. They asked him to stop making a fuss and go to sleep. The trader said, "No, you don't understand. I've learned to watch out. Who knows? It was a rat today. Tomorrow, it could be a snake chasing the rat." There's a saying that actually when a rat comes, the snake follows because the snakes eat rats. Shankar then explained the relevance of the story to the audience. The MKSs and the rural citizens had just looked at the accounts of the panchayat in the public hearings. They had found the rat, but the snake of huge embezzlements threatened them. The rations, the housing and employment denied on public works, and huge scams were not far away. The people would do well when responding to the first alarm, lest the greater danger, like the dreaded snake, took away their right to live. Because when you're denied your rations, when you're denied your food, when you're denied your right to work, when you're denied your right to education, it's a death knell. So this is the way I think the campaign really took folklore and spread it further in their own language. And of course there's those two lines from Manjhi which you like so much. And how do you communicate this apart from storytelling, which limits one person and a small audience? So we have had huge numbers of songs. Would you like to sing with me?
I'm really bad at this. Somebody else needs to hit here.
Well, I don't know who's there to sing. There's beneath. Anyway, I'll just recite it because I don't think a single voice is good. Manjhi was a Dalit. He died about 4 years ago. Lyric writer, illiterate, small farmer. Knew 500 songs of Kabir. I don't know, you all study South Asia, so you must have heard the name of Kabir. He was a great Sufi poet of the subcontinent. And he created all our songs, and he created them just like that. And he remembered the words, and they were sung everywhere. One song he created, in which he said that the first line was, the robbers and dacoits of yore used to shoot you with a gun. The robbers and dacoits of today kill you with a pen. Because actually what happens is, in those records, you're continually damned as liars. Every record, you go and say, I worked for 8 hours, minimum wages, and they'd say, no, but the records say you didn't. Because they'd mark you absent. And that money would go into the pockets of somebody who was not working. So when you asked for any government record, they were not shown to you. So they finally decided that we needed transparency. And Manjhi made this beautiful song, and the song went viral because there was no social media. It went viral. The whole of Rajasthan used to sing the song, and wherever we went, they would all say, sing that song, because that song was something that stated their entire political position and their economic plight, and also demanded the right to know. Actually, today there are 6 to 8 million users of the right to information law every year. And it's still there in spite of the 70 people having been killed because they asked for right to information, asked for information. So Mohanji's song really brings in the basic reason why the right to information law came, because that piece of paper that they hide really hides your right to live, however you translate it. And it's like water, it gets translated differently by different people.
Just to elaborate a little, when you say the right to know is the right to live, and then you quote Mohanbag, you say is Dalit, not through formal education. I mean, so why would poor marginalized communities with little education, what does that have to do with the right to live and information? It doesn't sound very logical. Can you draw out the logic of the connections?
That's what I did, but anyways, I'll draw out more if you like. For people who have been denied all kinds of rights, the police station is a nightmare. It's been created to protect people against misuse of the law. Entering a police station means an act of doom. Because the moment you go in, the cops there asking for money, asking for a bribe. You go to a ration shop, the ration shop will tell you that the rations are over, and it will tell you that somebody's taken your rations, so you go back, and a series of such things. So what actually Right to Information did, and we did this big exercise in a place called Sarguja in Madhya Pradesh with a very good civil servant called Harsh Mandar, who was then divisional commissioner. We went and looked at the ration card. The ration card, my ration card for instance, says there's nothing been issued to me. No wheat, no kerosene, and nothing else. No, nothing. So it's blank. But you ask for the register of the ration shop when you show, and it shows against my name, everything issued. And somebody's thumbprint, which is not mine, because my ration card doesn't show it. So just accessing these two documents, you have a proof of corruption. Similarly, in a muster roll, which is the roll in which people's names are written, a labor list, you access the labor list and you see you have not been paid your wages, you're fighting for it, or you've been paid much less than your wage. You access that labor list and you see that dead people's names are on the labor list. You see that women like me who never work the way ordinary laborers do, our names are on the labor list. And then you get the voters list and you find that the voters list has been just copied into the labor list, and they've done away with the money. So that's why for them, in short, it's a right to live. Even if you go to the hospital, you've been bitten by a snake and you need serum, they'll say go and get the serum from miles away. And actually the serum that should be in the storeroom of the hospital has been sold to the nearby medical shop, who will sell it back to you for an enormous amount of money when it is free. So at every step, information is indeed power, information is life. So that's why they were willing to fight, because it was food, it was employment, it was health, it was everything.
So there seems to be a question we can take, like we'll take two quick interjections that are related to this, and then we'll continue the conversation further.
So my question is related to this. I thought you were asking how illiteracy relates to information. Is that what? Because I'm curious about that. Is illiteracy then an obstacle to someone making effective use of the Right to Information Act?
That's post the right to information law. And what I said was the pre-law. Actually, they understood the need for transparency much quicker than you and I did, literate as we are. Because for them, the road to livelihood, life, depends on transparency. Why do you need literacy for that? Implicit in my story, why do you need literacy to understand basic connections and logic? I read a very interesting book many years ago called About Communication by a Norwegian writer. I'll get his name in 1 minute. And the first chapter, he said, I was very interested in it, the first chapter said, the arrogance of Aristotle. You and I are trained in Aristotelian logic. We think we have to follow, I am a man, all men are mortal, all human beings are mortal, I am a human being, therefore I am mortal, and that's the only logic. But we follow a different logic. Logic has very many roots, very many different ways of arriving at the same conclusion. What has that got to do with literacy? Literacy, for me, is a skill. And intelligence is much beyond that. All the corrupt people in India are literate. Every single one of them. Some of them are supra-literate. The people who have swindled the banks are supra-literate because they know how to effect scams even through the internet. They misuse everything. So literacy is only a skill. And the illiterate are very intelligent people, like Northi, my friend, who was the head of the village council, and ran the council much better than any other person who had been elected. And she is illiterate in a manner of speaking because she doesn't have a certificate. But she can work the computer. She learned English just by working the computer. She can go to the website of the works program, download information. She can tell the girl who's been appointed to work the computer what she's doing wrong. Intelligence is not related only to literacy. Literacy is an important skill, but I don't think it's intelligence.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, but it ties up well, because what one is saying, and that's the aspect I wanted to bring out, is about how to a person who's been through formal education, literacy seems like a very insurmountable kind of a hurdle, which it is not, and it doesn't stop logic. Yeah, so both make sense. The post, it is a hurdle, but not insurmountable. Yes?
Why is it that certain states, let's say Tamil Nadu for instance, have been able to deliver services at the local level better compared to UP or Rajasthan? What can be done to change the models so that the delivery is more effective?
Well, I think Tamil Nadu has a history. You said Rajasthan, and which other state?
Rajasthan or UP?
UP and Rajasthan, if you look at the social fabric of these two states, and you look at Tamil Nadu, you also look at the revenue administrative pattern of Tamil Nadu, and you look at UP and Rajasthan. Rajasthan was a feudal state. UP had zamindars. Zamindars were big landlords who extorted rent from them and passed it on to the imperial government. But in Tamil Nadu, there was a different system of revenue payment called Rayatwari, where you actually paid, every farmer paid his revenue or her revenue directly to government. It developed a relationship of the ordinary person with the government on a greater basis of equality than it did either in Rajasthan or in UP. So there's a history of demanding from the government services and demanding supply. Whereas in Rajasthan and in UP, we have to fight different systems. In one, you have to fight the feudal system of not having a king anymore, who did what he liked with you, and on the other hand, a big landlord who held you and your soul to ransom because he negotiated with an imperial power. I think that broad, and then there's social history and there's so many other things. There's been many subaltern movements in Tamil Nadu which fought against caste, which fought against oppression. You haven't had the same kind of social movements in UP or in Rajasthan. Though mind you, Rajasthan's much better because of the Sufi influence that we have in Rajasthan. Khwaja Mainuddin Chishti lived and died in Ajmer. So the Sufi influence in Rajasthan is much more. So there are other kinds of softening of the temper in Rajasthan than you would have where I think the divides are much more harsh. So I think India is not one. As you know, each state has a different character, a social character, a different economic character, a different set of history of relationship with power. And if the right to information was the dismantling of power centers, so each state had its own way of looking at power. But they were uniformly clear that they wanted to dismantle those power centers. And that's why RTI became so successful across the board, whether you were a scholar or a worker or a peasant or a doctor or a lawyer or a judge or even a civil servant or an elected member of parliament. You got your information quicker through a right to information application rather than through your parliament or through the assembly, because it cut short all the rubbish we accumulate through red tape and through files, and you went directly and you could see your file and you could extract the information.
So before we get more into the logistics of running the government or into how delivery systems can be improved, and that could be a substantial part of the talk, but I'm just going to go to the next set of thoughts that we've been talking about. So one of the things that I think we've experienced in our work in Bihar, and because we come from similar kinds of organizations and political work that we do, is that we raise a lot of questions about our entitlements, and especially when we're demanding from the government. But when it comes to turning the gaze towards our own selves, and maybe, talking about some of the prejudices that you were talking about, the caste, the class, the gender aspects, or the religious biases and prejudices. I can talk from our context. The average member of the union would behave very similarly to the kind of dominant mainstream thought. And if it's casteist, then we are likely to be as casteist or as religiously bigoted as the larger community. So it always bothers me that has the way we built our organizations, has there been a lack of attention on our part? Have we paid too much attention to economism and making systems and deliveries work, and always been pointing a finger on the other but not looking at ourselves? And is that linked to the way our voting patterns are, and why sometimes we feel that when it actually comes to casting the vote, people may not want to hear the organization or the union? And I actually am drawing on something that really I find very interesting is cinema. And I'd seen this one film which we often use is it's called Salt of the Earth. It's made somewhere in the US on a mining community, and it was banned. It was made in the 40s and 50s, and basically it's miners who are all men, and there is a court injunction by the owner which basically stops them from picketing, and so the women picket. And once the women come out on the picket fence, they basically the gender dynamics of the family changes. And there is this one scene which really had an impact on me, is where all these men, the miners, are at home and they're drying laundry, and they basically say so the women are out and the men are doing the household chores which have been relegated to the women, and they say the union does not run our homes and they don't decide for us. So sometimes these things, along with the larger electoral politics, I don't know if it's making sense, Aruna, but if you could comment on this and take this.
I think, I don't think the NKSS has seen these as divided. So you all call me to talk about the RTI, so I talk about it. The time's so limited. But I personally, and I'm a woman, and I do not think of life. Not only am I president of the National Federation of Indian Women, which is a titular position, but I've lived all my life as a feminist, and I do not think I believe in this fragmented notion of life. Where do I end my public life, and where do I begin my private life? And don't forget that our slogan was personal is political in the 60s. We said my life is a revolution. We said my personal is my political. What is where it ends doesn't exist. And in a good organization, it doesn't finish with your political action. In Devuri, for instance, the first battle we fought was on caste, because we allowed everyone to come in and touch the water pitcher and drink from there. And we rented or lived in the house which belonged to Shankar's cousin. and the entire neighborhood was somehow related to Shankar. And he didn't belong to an upper caste, he belonged to what is called a backward community, just a notch higher than the Dalits. But the entire community said that you cannot allow anybody to come and drink water from your kitchen. So the first real pitched battle in Devduri was on caste. And we made it very clear that you can do what you like, but there will be everybody from every community, man, woman, child, who will come and drink from the same pitcher. And we asked them, you bring water from a Dalit well, all of you. So then it's all right, because it's a private well of a Dalit. You go in there and you stand there and you say you have a right to that water, then that's fine. But when you drink that water, what's wrong with that? And Shankar's daughter became a particular target because we used to bring water from the well on our heads. I also learned how to balance a pot when I was there. So when you balance the pot, it's very difficult because you have to be very careful about how you move your neck. Anyway, this kid used to bring 2 pots on her neck. She was just a few inches shorter than I, but she was not old enough, but she managed it. And she couldn't lift the second pot. So the Dalit owner of the well, Nagodaji, just lifted the second pot onto her head. And the entire village turned up, break that pot, you can't drink water from that pot. So the whole thing escalated till finally we said to them, we will do it. And what you do, and we'll take you to court. Because you violated the Scheduled Caste Atrocities Act, and we will have you arrested, and you will have no bail. Bail is granted by the High Court. So we said, you will go to jail, and there will be no bail. You open your mouth a little more, and you've had it. So after all these arguments, they went away. But believe me, after that, we all drank water from the pitcher, and nobody said a thing. And that's how I think everything, and the second important thing I would like to talk about is temple entry. You know that temples are not entered by Dalits. There are special temples. I don't know how many of you know, but every caste has its own temple, and not like the church, not like the mosque. Everyone doesn't enter. You have restrictions. So in a place called Sulia, we had this planned entry of a temple where 1,500 of us, local women, because women are also not allowed to enter. So the Dalits and the women, plus a lot of men, we entered the temple, and some of the residue of that fight is still on. And they're taking all kinds of positions now on all kinds of quirky issues, because they haven't forgiven us for entering the temple and opening it up to everybody. So we entered, and the women too entered, because to enter the nave of the temple is not allowed. So I think systematically we picked up about rape, about so many issues. They are general issues. Everybody in the world outside knows us for RTI. But locally, we are known as a Sangathan that addresses any injustice. You can't categorize injustice only in terms of government action against you. Injustice, whether it's social injustice or economic injustice, has to play an equal role. Otherwise, people will not come to you, and people will not trust you, and people will not have faith in any statement you make. You have to be unfragmented. The fragmented individual, I'm sorry to say this, some of you may disagree with me, is a male concept. The female concept is of an integrated person. Because I really don't know where I stopped being an activist and I become, suddenly to Kamaini I'm a colleague, and then suddenly I'm an aunt who's nervous about her health condition. It can be anything. I mean, I'm not really her aunt, but I could be her aunt or her mother or whatever. So we don't cease to be. And I'm called by the entire village, I'm not called Aruna Ji, I'm called Granny. They own me as a grandmother now because I've got grey hair and I'm above 70. So even when I go to the village council meeting, they all say, Aruna Granny has come. So I think in the rural environment, just as it can become horrible, it can be turned into a great positive, and I think you do it and I do it. We fight caste, we fight religious differences, we fight all these notions, we fight even language. Why do you use a certain word which is so discriminatory? Unless you do all this, then the bigger political battles are elusive.
Yeah, makes sense. So just this last thought, and after that we can just have more questions. Does time allow? So the last thing so there is a particular atmosphere in India right now. where there's been a lot of targeted violence, and it's not just on certain communities, but on people who've been raising or who've been champions of the rationalist thought in the country. So there have been academicians, and there have been recently Gauri Lankesh, who was the woman journalist in Karnataka. In that context, I mean, because these are discussions which are also happening all over. I mean, how do you connect this larger political education that I think the last question I was trying to lead to, where School for Democracy or the efforts to bring in political education along with our campaigns, what role do you think, and how do you see this changing picture of India?
One of the most horrific things that has happened in India in the recent years, the last year and a half, has been lynching people. There was a very good article in the New York Times. I don't know how many of you have read it. In Rajasthan, 3 people have been lynched, and the 4th there's a question mark. The first person to be lynched was Pehlu Khan. There was another lynching which took place, and the 3rd lynching was Afrazul. All Muslims. They were lynched for no other reason than they were Muslim. And my government in Rajasthan and my government in Delhi has perpetuated these crimes by not taking action when the first lynching took place of Akhlaq in Ghaziabad, near Delhi. You can't lynch people. If you suspect someone of a crime, there are legal avenues open, and you must go and register a case. Even if it's a false case, we have false cases against us on so many issues. So there's a false case registered, you have at least an opportunity to prove that you are innocent. The worst crime that has been committed by the governments in India, whichever government is guilty of it, is allowing this violation of every single rule of law in every single form to take place. For me and for the NKSS, when Afrazul was lynched last November 6th, was it? 6th of November, which was the day on which Ayodhya, they brought down the mosque, an absolutely crazy man lured Afrazul to an open field, killed him, lynched him, and had himself videoed by his teenage nephew. I can't tell you how horrific it is. Lynching is like baying for blood. It's thirst for violence. It's not killing each other in a moment of anger or fury. It's cold-blooded killing, where ultimately violence becomes a sadistic pleasure for people. And this was not only videoed, but it went on, unfortunately, Indian WhatsApp is a mode of spreading information now. It got on the WhatsApp. I promise you, I didn't want to see it. But those who saw it were disturbed for nights, who couldn't sleep. Strong people who not really disturbed by violence. They see so much violence on film and so on. The MKSs went and did a fact-finding for Afrazul, the first step. We did, I can only say what happened with that incident. There are many things we've done elsewhere. So we did a fact-finding for Afrazul with the People's Union for Civil Liberties. We sent that report, but we also tried to do something on compassionate grounds. The town was stunned, because not even the Hindus in that town, even those people who were rigid Hindus, did not support this killing at some levels. There was a political grouping that paid for blood. The larger part of the Hindus did not want it, the cultural Hindus as you describe it. They did not want this killing. So we held a meeting for peace in the Gandhi Bhavan, because Gandhi, no matter what we say about him in India, still remains the voice of non-violence, of peace, and of humanity. We went to this Gandhi Bhavan. The man who organized this meeting in the Gandhi Bhavan was scared to give us the Bhavan because of the repercussions, but we persuaded him. We got the Gandhi Bhavan. We had people come and speak there from all over India, saying that this is a heinous crime, and this city must take care of its own reputation and its peace. And in that meeting there were Muslims and Hindus who sat together and talked about peace. You have to have not only reprisals and police action and the law taking its course against those things, you have to somewhere touch the human spirit. And we tried to do that on the 30th of January, which is the day Gandhi was assassinated. We had another meeting in Rajasthan where we invited two extremely beautiful singers called Charul and Vinay, who have sung so many songs, including a famous song which is everybody in the activist world knows, just as we all know We Shall Overcome in many languages in India, which is an activist song now. We don't know the source, many of us. We don't know it was sung by the people in the civil rights movement, but so many of us sing it in India. This song is sung, it's called Mandir Masjid, Girja Ghar ne baant liya Bhagwan ko. I don't know how many Indians know the song. It says, you've divided the temple, the mosque, you've divided the oceans, but don't divide human beings. It's a very powerful song. They created the song and sang it in Bombay when the riots took place and Muslims and Hindus killed each other. We brought that couple down to Rajasthan and we had a special evening of music where we talked about compassion, about humanity and humanhood. I can't say brotherhood because where will I go? And I can't say sisterhood, but where will you go? So humanhood, if you like, humanity, love, compassion. And today's politics is ruthless, it's compassionless, it's without humanity. I don't want that politics. It goes in the name of democracy, of the electoral pattern. It doesn't deliver where it should. Nor does it deliver my constitutional rights. India is a secular country which describes the state, and Article 35 gives all of us the right to worship whichever way we want, however we want, whenever we want. So we violate our own constitution and the government is silent. In the case of Afrazul, they arrested the man. The pity is, the man who killed Afrazul was a Dalit. And the pity also is that he lost his job because of demonetization. And ever since, I don't know how many of you know that our government demonetized and ruined small industry, hawkers, people that set up small units, startups, completely. And this man who killed Afrazul, called Shambulal, was a victim of demonetizing. He was without work, without job, without money, and whoever filled whatever they did into his head, he went and did precisely what he was asked to do. And he was filled with hate. And he thought his victory would be killing somebody on the day in which the mosque had been brought down in Ayodhya would be an act of victory. So it's this kind of tragedy that haunts us. And I think it's much more than just the lynching. It's the narratives, it's the hate propaganda, it's the victimization, and though it is not what the large majority of India wants, it is a very, very poisonous and very powerful system which is working amongst us. And those of us who want to make democracy work don't want that to happen. Because the biggest threat to India for making democracy work, Kamaini, as you also know, is this hatred. Because we'll no longer be a country. And then of course they've now started it against Dalits. So the latest is that so many Dalits are in jail because of a different reason. And how much are you going to divide us? And are we a nation? So these are questions I think the US also faces at other levels. And every nation faces at its own levels. But democracy has to address this. Can't get on with just mere voting and just mere propaganda and just talking on the television. Every government and every democratic system has to address this dehumanized, I don't know what to call it, dehumanized, not only, it's worse than propaganda, that is spreading all over in the world. So I think you have to make democracy work. You have to recognize it.
Yeah. So Yeah, thank you, Aruna. If you take questions here that you could take this forward. So, here you and then Surya at the back.
I have a question. I wonder what you feel about the efficacy of the whole political process and political parties that try to speak for disadvantaged people, and there's a lot of hopes around these parties, and then they don't necessarily deliver what people are hoping they will, like the Aam Aadmi Party or the DSP. I wonder how you see those, if political parties can go a long way to addressing what you see as your dream, how India should develop, how democracy should develop.
Should we take all the three questions together so that there are ideas to be discussed? So we'll take you and then Surya.
That's all right. It's related to that. So.
Yeah, so just go ahead.
Actually, first I wanted to really thank you for the talk and making the connections at the end to the United States. So one of the questions I actually wanted to ask was, what do you see as affecting farm workers in particular, given your own specific work with the KSSM, in the current context? Because you had mentioned that there's a continuation of the European project. But right now we still have a fairly severe farm crisis. And so I was thinking about the relationship between the democratic activism you're doing on the one hand and the problem in agriculture itself on the other. And so what you thought democratization of the information could do within that situation.
So when we think of the practice of democracy, if one person is equal to one vote, then we have a president in this country who has lost that. In India, we have a prime minister who only won 30% of the vote. And in an atmosphere of increased polarization, where there is an extreme divide between people who vote for this one person or the other, is democracy flawed? Is it even going to work for people whose opinions are not reflected in the government that govern them?
See, I think the right to information, I come back to the right to information with your question. We need a political party. All of us need political parties. But we need political parties with ideological commitment. Not a human being, I mean your president or my prime minister, stands in front of me and speaks as if he's a magician. I don't want a magician. I want a person who will work a system. Between the political representative and me, between a political party and me, is a social contract. There's no trust. I don't know that person. I don't know how he behaves to his wife, to his family. I just know that he offers me something, and that something is part of a social contract. It's a social contract between that individual and me, keeping in mind the laws of the land, the constitution of that country if it has a constitution, otherwise, and also its ideological party position. What does this party stand for? I want to know very clearly its economic policy, its social policy, and its political dreams. I want to know that. What had happened is that we got sucked into Bollywood. I'm not saying Hollywood. I'm saying Bollywood because I know what happens in Bollywood films. You have these larger-than-life people who are so romanticized, and then you go gaga over them, but you can't have it in politics. It's all right in a film you sit and see for 3 hours, whether Shah Rukh Khan or Amir Khan or whoever it is, or Amitabh Bachchan, it's perfectly all right. But you can't carry that into politics. I would like to know, I don't want a man or a woman who's so big. I want a man or a woman who's clear-headed, who's articulate, carries in the party a whole team. We've forgotten that. And I'm sorry to say that the US has taught us this terribly one-to-one debate, this one-to-one politics. India didn't have it before. It was a party with an ideology which elected whomsoever it wanted to be president or prime minister. But today we want that person to be stated first. Why? I am electing a party to power, an ideology to power, a position to power. And then the choice of their president or prime minister, they choose. Accountable to the cabinet, accountable to me, accountable to the people. And that's why right to information is so critical. And we've been arguing that, and actually this campaign is in its second stage now, where we are arguing that every law that's made, every policy that's made, must be for public, under public scrutiny before it's passed by Parliament. We want to scrutinize every law, and we want to see whether it follows constitutional norms or not, whether the formulations are in accordance with what we want done or not done. So, but that is where you and I, and it's transparency, and you and I have to work much harder to make democracy work. Then, about farm workers, I want to say that farming in India today is not part of the development paradigm. We want to get rid of our agriculture. By and large, we want to make smart cities, we want to increase our urbanized land. Farmers are not relevant. So whether you give money to farmers as loans, the percentage of rent is, the interest is much higher. It's a series of issues which are hitting the farmers. So that is a big battle, and there are huge farmers' organizations which are fighting these battles, which have taken up these issues. But we have to, I think now, go a step further, and that step further will have to be decided collectively by the farmers' groups. They have done peaceful protest. We had Tamil Nadu farmers for a year in Parliament Street. So many of them killed. You had farmers, 40,000 farmers, peacefully protesting in Rajasthan. You had, but we have to go much further. We have to ask for the development policy to be stated and critiqued by a people before it's put into motion. The Niti Aayog, we don't know what the Niti Aayog does. It's completely opaque, which has replaced the Planning Commission. So how can we then critique policy without knowing what it is? So that's a big issue. We also have a great system of doublespeak now. The rhetoric and the substance are widely divided today. So the rhetoric of almost all politicians, but particularly the party in power, the rhetoric has to be called to account. And the RTI movement called the rhetoric into account. When the Chief Minister of Rajasthan said he'll give us right to information, made public statements, said it in the assembly, we fought for many years to make that rhetoric into substance. We said, you've said it in Parliament, you're an elected representative, you're the Chief Minister of the state, deliver. So we'll have to work hard to make the delivery possible. This vote, I don't think democracy is flawed. I think we are flawed. I really think. Very often when I sit somewhere and think what is wrong, I think it is a political party. Now what is the political party without me and you? What is the political party without us calling them to book on ethics? Why have we just gone completely quiet about public ethics? Why is it that corporations, which you have plenty of in this city, in Seattle, why is it that political parties, why is it that all of them are conniving with each other? In India, we now have a law that says that there are electoral bonds and then there are systems by which our political parties can get foreign money. And they need not disclose to the people of the country where they get the money, how much they get, and for what they've got the money. We are sold. I mean, we are back into Imperial Britain. Because if corporations are going to finance our political parties through these electoral bonds, do you think my Chief Minister is going to listen to me? I'm not going to give him any money. I'm demanding constitutional rights. Or will he listen to a corporation where they're paying him and funding his election process? So we have to ask much more fundamental questions. We have also got to ask questions of social media, where in India people are paid to perpetuate fake news, to attack the person who's opposing candidates. We have packages in newspapers. Paid news is an issue. which has also been raised ethically in the press council, where you can pay a newspaper money for promoting yourself, for decrying your opponent, and there's a third package in which you are promoted and he's decried. You pay more money. So anything is possible in this kind of completely immoral society. How can democracy function? Because it reflects you and me. So I think democracy is not flawed. We'll have to now understand that we are flawed. That either we are not making it work, or we are allowing things that are totally wrong to happen without questioning. And I think that's where people who get information out and place it on the board for you and me to see are saying to us, work. And that's why 70 of them have lost their lives, because they brought out information which will ruin people. And that's why now the Prime Minister's office is saying that every person who asks for information and dies, that information need not be shown, which is a death warrant to every right to information activist. Anything you ask for, if they don't want to give the information out, they'll just kill you. They were killed in spite of it being a demand from the campaign that that information should be put on the website immediately, so that no other persons are killed for that information, and no one will kill, because they know that if they kill the human being who was asking for that information will come out even quicker on the website. So there are battles and more battles. And if you think that, if you and I think that democracy can be put aside, do we want a dictatorship? Do we want a despot? Do we want fascism? What do we want? So I think democracy has failed because we have allowed it to be, we've taken too much for granted. I don't think we are bad people, but we've taken too much for granted. And I think we also have to understand that our bit of the pie is also going to go. Many of us keep quiet because we don't want things destabilized. But my stability depends on the stability of many other things. We understand that there is a link, then I think we'll put jobs, professions, all of that on one side, and we'll understand that as a citizen of the country, I have a role to play in ethics, and that it cannot be held against me by my employer or by anybody else, that I pose an issue on ethics and I continue to work with you. When are we going to get that mature in the world? I don't know. But I think we'll have to begin that debate somehow, and sometime you and I, or a huge collective of people, will have to begin the debate. You also asked a question before, which I did not answer, which was about, you asked me something about 60,000 crores. I don't remember exactly what you said.
I know it's versus job creation.
Job creation, no jobs are being created. It's a complete lie, because everything is being privatized. In Rajasthan, we are auctioning our schools. Our best run government schools are being auctioned to private parties. Schools running well on highways, accessible, and all the schools that are running in the interior where teachers don't go are going to be with the government. All the good schools are going into private hands. Fees will go up. We've just risen, our literacy levels have just risen, and the moment we privatize in India, our literacy levels are going to fall, because schooling will become expensive and our poor will not be able to afford the schools that they have so far.
I have a question. I remember you mentioned about the School for Democracy. Could you elaborate a little bit on it?
Well, actually, in the beginning of this millennia, some of us who have fought in these various struggles felt that when we are struggling, say that Narmada Bachao Andolan, take the right to information campaign, food security, we talk about a specific issue. We are all issue-based campaigns. So we take up certain issues and we fight really hard for it, and we educate our people as we go along about the issue, and the campaign grows, gets stronger, and we understand everything. Take Kudan Kulam, the campaign against the atomic power plant in the south of India. The women knew far more about radiation and the fallout of nuclear things than I did. I was ashamed when they talked to me. They were just 5th class, 8th class, just secondary school pass, but they knew far more. So they know a lot about that particular issue. But when you branch off into the larger democratic debate, there are areas of darkness. even I have areas of darkness. I have areas of darkness. All of us have areas of darkness. To make a democracy work, you have to understand the nuances. You also have to understand the details. The British said, the devil lies in the details, and it does. So unless you understand the details, you can't fight a battle. Where do you have the space? I can't come to your university, I can't take time off and come and spend 6 months here, and you won't have me. I'll need money, I'll need all kinds of things. So this open space was imagined by many people, including Jean Drèze and many others, those of us who came up systematically with issues of larger democratic knowledge, which was not there. My lot, who worked so hard on certain issues, you ask them questions about, say, what is a political party's social agenda, they may not have known. Now you need to sit down for a week and understand the formation of a political party, its ideology, its social agenda, its economic agenda, its political agenda before you can take a call. And also about caste, which are sensitive issues. I mean, where is untouchability? What is caste? These are things which you have to have time to discuss. So we thought of this as an eclectic space. And it's been functioning, and of course, we don't take institutional money. We did not take institutional money, even for School for Democracy. So it had to come from individual donors who had integrity and would give money, because this space would critique everything. All political parties would be critiqued, all institutions would be critiqued, all development paradigms would be critiqued, corporations could be critiqued. So how can you take money from a corporation and then critique? Or you take money from a government and critique it. So money came in small amounts, and now we have a campus there. And over there we run these various courses. Like we are soon going to run a course for young people to understand politics, because we're going to have elections at the end of the year. So we want them to understand, the under 25 especially, what it is that a democracy promises you, how do you access and how do you see that vote, which is so critical, and how do you cast the vote, and what is the trajectory of that vote. It doesn't end with the day you cast the vote. It then grows into a set of promises for 5 years. And how do you make it work for yourself in Parliament, in the Assembly, in the Village Council, wherever you cast the vote, it has to speak to you and speak truths to you, and you have to speak truths to the person who exercises power on your behalf. And how will that work out? Now that needs time. So you have to understand what is your fundamental right in the Constitution, what is the preamble, what are the basic rights, from which article of the Constitution, what laws have been framed. And at the end of a constitutional course, our young people say, oh, but whatever I've been doing is totally constitutional. I've been working for the Indian Constitution. If I've been working against casteism, if I've been working against untouchability, how dare my local bigwig or the politician or the government servant say that I'm anti-national. I've been working for the Constitution, which has been made for my country. Nothing can be better than that. Some children who come because they've been indoctrinated into religion, they have said it's better to chant the fundamental rights of the Constitution in the beginning of the day than to talk about chant the Hanuman Chalisa or whatever they do every morning. It's much better, because this is a more important prayer and a more important commitment than the commitments we make every day through religion. Not that religion will be set aside, religion will have its function and its role, but in politics, it's the Constitution, its basic guarantees, it's the notion of equality, the notion of liberty, the notion of fraternity, the notion of a community, the notion of how together we build a society that should be more important.
We do have an introduction brochure for MKSS as well as School for Democracy, so feel free to pick it up.
And we have these books for sale. I'm sorry to say that in the middle of this, but it's there for sale. This has not yet come to the United States. It's been selling in India. And since so many of you talk about and want to know about the right to information, it's a collection of the stories which make the history of the RTI till 2005. May I take 2 minutes?
Yeah.
And because of the hundreds of counter-narratives that are running amok in my country, a publisher came to us about 5 years ago and said, write down the history. I said, we can't do it. we're just too crazily busy running from pillar to post. There's something rape here, something else there, and something else there. They persuaded us that it should be done. So this is based on factual data collected by the MKSS over the years and now housed in the School for Democracy. Much of it given to the Nehru Memorial Library in Delhi, which is work done on the Employment Guarantee Act, work done on the Right to Information Act, because it's public property, doesn't belong to the MKSS. Actually, I don't have a sense of identity only with the MKSS. The MKSS is a vehicle for carrying a message through. And there's the JJSS, there are many others. So each one of us is equally important and as valid as the other. It's only that because of the limitation of a human being's physical space, I worked with the MKSS, but I don't think it's the only organization, nor do I think it has every answer that it should have. But this has the stories of ordinary people. It proves a point that actually, and I think I would like to just read a few lines from this, which have been very important to me. This book is a tribute to the large collective from whose action, determination, memory and records a narrative has emerged. Stories, anecdotes, and the common sense of its logic in the pages to come, which remain anonymous for the time being because of prosaic things like word limits and the number of pages, are its real authors. Even those of us whose names are quoted, we are mere scribes. So it's not a book written by me, it's a book written by the memory, collective memory of many people. You have judges writing, you have journalists writing, peasants writing, storytellers writing, women writing, men writing, you have everything in this. And it is the narrative that then fashions. And there is a very famous historian, who mentioned about people's history.
Howard Zinn.
Sorry?
Howard Zinn.
Howard Zinn, and the other person, the Indian. I've quoted him now. See, this is age playing up. Anyway, there are two great historians, Howard Zinn and this Indian historian. He is very famous one, I'm forgetting him. Anyway. Anyway, he's there somewhere. Anyway, they both prompted me to write down the stories and told me that history is not written only by kings and rulers and scholars. History can be written. Huh? So, history can be written by ordinary people who are really the people who create the history, people who always become subjects of history, and history is written about them. So for once, let's hear history from them. How did they see it in the immediacy of their lives, and how it has led to something which has become now a history of a movement. So this book actually rose from that need to write a narrative, but now Kosambi, the famous Indian historian, he said that history is always written by people in power. So history must be recorded also from a people's point. So Howard Zinn and Kosambi are quoted in this book as inspiring me to think that it would be possible and it would be valid to write a history bottom up. In fact, every movement in India should write its history. Whether it's Narmada, whether it is the farmers' movement, the agricultural movement, so much that has been contributed by the movements, political movements in my country. It really is a treasure house. And this book, I really thought it was an indulgence, but what it has really done for me in the last 8 or 9 launches of this book is that every time we've launched the book, it's become like a gala. In Delhi, we had 3 launches, not 1. And every time there were about 400 people there, meeting, because for the first time in many years, they're meeting together to express hope and also a sense of fulfillment, because there are many others. This is not the only one, but they have not been written about. To express a sense of happiness that they got together to do something. Because today there's a general sense of disaster, that people's action can't take place, that action will only come from a controlled government. So the liberation of feeling that we did something brought people together. I don't think we all are on the same page on every aspect of political democracy. We were very different. There were government servants, there were ex-judges, there was famous lawyers, there were ex-vice-chancellors, peasants, workers, women, men. Why did we all get together to celebrate what's a fairly ordinary book? Because it expresses a sense of democratic achievement, because we did something. And I think now more than ever we need to feel that sense of achievement as a positive push to do more things in India, and that's why I think people came. And it happened everywhere, in the rural areas, in the urban areas. And I now feel that all of us, whose parents, whose cousins, whose sisters, who themselves are involved, must maintain records and write. Because there is something in the written word which goes far beyond yourself, far beyond your immediate location, and travels far and wide. And I think those of us who decried literacy, like me, have had have found an answer in the critique on not keeping records, not putting it down.
I think we need to wrap up, or we're losing the room in a minute. I just want to ask everyone to join me in thanking our speakers and our conversationalists today.
Yeah, thank you so much for hearing this today. Sorry we took time.
No, it was wonderful. It was perfect. And there is this moment of, I mean, I experience it in my classes, I experience it in conversations with friends, with family, of kind of, there are many people who feel kind of despairing in this political moment. So this story of the RTI, and in general hearing from you, is a really inspiring moment. So thank you.
Thank you.
In case you want to share your contact details, have a sign up sheet.